from his studios in New York, it's time for Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets life. Here's your host, Dan Tortora.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. Proud to be here with you every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time here on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt and on wakeupcalldt.com's homepage, where you can listen in to the embedded feed for mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. We're inside the Charney's men's clothing studios. Dress up and dress down at Charney's. Look good and feel good no matter what you're looking for. Every single style, every single man can find something at Charney's. This is your one-stop shop to get what you need for whatever events you got going on, or you just want to grab an extra belt or a new tie or whatever you have, whatever you're looking for. If you're going on vacation, if you're a big Tommy Bahama fan, everything is sitting there waiting for you at Charney's. And their huge, vast array of different styles for men and all different ages. So make sure you head out to Charney's today and let them know that we sent you over there, and we appreciate you so much for doing that. With that being said, in this first hour of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, I'm proudly joined by Dave Pasiak. Dave Pasiak is somebody who is no stranger to the broadcast. He is one of our consistent voices that you hear on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, and I always appreciate having Dave on. Dave has been coaching for a very long time, doing amazing things in our community as well as in the community in Vermont, in so many different places, and just touching lives really everywhere. And, you know, the great thing for me is getting to hear from the people that, you know, were coached by Dave Pasiak or were around him, and, you know, he's been a mentor or a teacher or a coach or a little bit of everything or a friend. And that just, I mean, to me, that the weight of that, the Pasiak tree is something very special to me, because not only Dave, but the people that have been connected to him have been tremendous people. Some of them like David Hay and Mike Sugamosto and so on and so forth. So with that being said, we bring Dave in to speak on and analyze the Raptors-Warriors series as we head into Game 6. And first and foremost, Dave, how are we doing today?
Great, Dan. Good to talk to you again, and appreciate the kind words.
Absolutely. And Dave, I kind of want to start there for you before we get into the games. Just what you could say about, you know, the people that you've met and just the road. I mean, we look at David Hay, who, you know, obviously played for the Syracuse Stallions, and he went overseas and has found success overseas very recently here. Mike Sugamosto is, you know, the leading shareholder, so to speak, with the Syracuse Stallions. So, you know, he has the majority of that team in ownership and has just done a tremendous job there as president of the team and as one of the owners of the team. I mean, just what you can say about, you know, not only the people that whose lives you've touched, just being good people, but very successful, and just what it means to you to have these, you know, former players or former, you know, proteges or whatever you want to call it, that they've been so successful.
Well, I mean, it's great to see all those guys, you know, have success, stay involved in the game. You know, you mentioned Mike and Dave Hay, Lloyd Parkman, that played with the Stallions. You know, Jordan Pryor played with Binghamton Bulldogs. Like, so it's nice to see those guys continuing on with the game. You know, we've got a bunch of guys, former players, you know, Zach Thompson, Danny Frasina, Justin Stern, a bunch of those guys that are college head coaches now, and, you know, several other guys in the area that are high school coaches. So it's kind of neat to see them stay involved with the game, try to impact people, impact lives, and all that. So, you know, really proud of what all those guys are doing.
And what you can, I mean, you brought up Danny Frasina, and I want to speak on him for a second, because we did a show where we made history here on Wake Up Call and had that three-way conversation simultaneously live. Just what you could say about Danny and what he's done, and I know we've talked about it a little bit here on the show, but, you know, just what he's brought to the community and the work that he has put in, and him getting to start a team at Bryan and Stratton for their first ever men's basketball team after never having that in the history, just what that meant to you.
Well, I think he's really doing a great job and working his tail off to get that program established and everything. And I don't know if people really can fully appreciate, how difficult it is, to try to create something out of nothing and build a program literally from scratch. I mean, they've got a really good person, Nick Dimitrievsky, as the AD over there. That's had a lot of success with their soccer team, and I think he's certainly been an anchor for Dan. But I think Dan has done a great job of establishing a presence in the community in a short amount of time. Being visible and giving prospective student athletes another outlet to play college basketball and play at a high level and everything. And I think the way he's established that program in a short amount of time is really, really remarkable. And I think that in the coming years you're going to see more and more success out of Brian and Stratton.
That coming from Dave Pasiak, basketball coach and analyst, hanging out with us here this morning. And Dave, to look at this series with the Raptors, and the Warriors, I want to broad scope it here to start things off. Just overall feels from Game 5, and then we'll break it down as we go. But the overall feel for you after watching Game 5.
Well, the short condensed version is I think the Raptors blew a golden opportunity. Maybe their best opportunity to win a championship. It was right there for them, and going into the game, I thought with Durant coming back, I really thought there was a good chance that the Warriors would find a way to win that game. But then when Durant went down, I think Toronto wasted a little opportunity to really step on Golden State's throat right there. If you remember, right after Durant left the game, Golden State extended their lead, and I thought Toronto had a chance at that point in the game to really step on Golden State, and they didn't do it. And then at the end of the game, Toronto battles back, and they go up 6 with a little less than 3 minutes to go, and then really kind of an inexplicable timeout I thought hurt Toronto. And then coming down the stretch, they really didn't come away with a lot of good looks at the basket. Leonard had been on a tremendous individual role, and then coming out of the timeout, he got the first touch. Golden State made a little defensive adjustment, creating a tough shot, and Kawhi never really got an opportunity to score coming down the stretch. Bad turnover, end of the game. Like Green did a great job of getting out to Lowry, or Lowry may have been the hero of the whole series. But I thought Toronto really kind of squandered an opportunity to put Golden State away on Monday night.
Yeah, and I would have to agree with you that, Toronto really, they had an opportunity right in front of them, like you said, that they just didn't capitalize on, they didn't finish on. And, to have that, to be at home and to be in that type of situation, in that type of environment, and to know that, like you said, they could step on the throat right then and there, because we see the absence once again of Kevin Durant, and to not take that and to not finish that off is just something that, you kind of scratch your head about, and the whys, and to know that, these opportunities don't come around over and over and over again. So that's obviously something that, affects this team and can affect the future of this and kind of where they're going. And now they got to play on the road again. And granted, they, one of our listeners just said Toronto's playing with fire, and I don't like it. It's that thought, and I mean, yeah, they did well at Oracle, but you won 2 games at Oracle. You don't want to push your luck, and you're in a position where you're up 3-1. You got 3 chances to win 1 game. You don't want to take all your chances and to play the way that they did and fight their way back into the game and do what they did toward the end of the game and just really do what they've done throughout the NBA playoffs, which is be that team that never gives up, never says die, and never goes away. That, with, 17.9 seconds left, I mean, and they said something like, oh, well, they didn't know that Kawhi was going to get double-teamed. Why would you not know that your best player is going to get double-teamed? And so he's at the top of the key. He doesn't know what to do. He gives it off to Van Vliet, who sends it over to Lowry, who hits the back of the backboard I mean, bring me into the last play as a coach. There's nothing drawn up. I mean, I'm guessing that the plan was get the ball in Kawhi's hand, but there's nothing drawn up on this. There's no play. There's no pick and roll. I'm saying, give the ball to Kawhi and then have Marc Gasol set a pick for him, set a screen, and then see if that works. If it doesn't, then roll down, dump it off to him, let him shoot in the lane. If he gets fouled, he's going to the basket. If not, he's got a high percentage shot. There's so many different things this team could have done. It just looked like confusion. It looked like garbage. It didn't look like there was any type of preparation or thought put into it. What did you think about that last drive? Because Nick Nurse has been a tremendous coach this season with the Raptors, but that last possession just looked like a whole lot of people confused on the court.
Well, I don't know if screening for Kawhi would have done anything for him beyond what happened. The reason I say that is, if they came and screened for Kawhi, Golden State was going to blitz the screen and double team him anyway, so you would have been back in the same situation. I think, what they got out of it, like, Green was really the guy. If you watch the play, Green did a great job for Golden State of not leaving Gasol too early, because as soon as they trapped, Golden State was in like a kind of scramble and rotate mode. So Green did a great job of staying home with Gasol just long enough so that they couldn't throw it into him and still getting out and getting a piece of Lowry's shot. As the ball swung, you thought Lowry was going to get a clean look at the basket, and he didn't. Green got a piece of it, and game over. But they had the ball in their best players' hands. Chance to win the game. You kind of call on your best player to make a play there because he's going to get double teamed, and that Golden State's going to do whatever they can to make somebody else make a play in that situation. So I think the only thing they might have done a little bit differently is flatten out a little bit, so Golden State had to make a deeper rotation to trap them. But the one thing I would have liked to see Leonard do is when he gave the ball up, he kind of became a spectator the rest of the possession. When he gave it up, I think had he done something quickly without the ball, he might have been able to get it back. Have an opportunity to score, because you want your best player to have the shot if possible in that situation. But Golden State knows that too. So.
Well, and that's the thing, is that it just looked like there was nothing. It looked like there was no plan. Get Kawhi the ball. Okay, he's double teamed. Okay, now we don't know what to do. And for Kyle Lowry to take that last shot, and it's just, he's been consistently inconsistent. It's just a fact. And he's not the guy that I'd want the ball in the hands of at the end of the game because of the way that, he has played. He's not a terrible player, but, he has his moments, but he's really not had a game. He hasn't had a moment. He hit some shots in this game. He scored some good points. He did some good things. But what do you think about Kyle Lowry where he is right now? Because, I agree with Leo Routins coming on the show and saying, listen, for the people that don't like Kyle Lowry or think that he doesn't do anything for the team, he's been a part of the most success that this franchise has ever had. So, you got to give him some credit where credit's due because he's been there for the success. At the same time, I'm like, yeah, he's been there for the success, but a lot of that came through DeRozan, and then after that it's come through Kawhi. So where does Kyle Lowry fit into the grand scheme of things for you, and what's your take on kind of what where Lowry stands?
Well, I think we talked about this, recently on one of the other broadcasts. That I think, he's kind of at the point now where, at one point he was 1 and 1A with DeRozan, and then Lowry kind of took a back seat and allowed Toronto to become DeRozan's team, which and that helped them continue their ascent. Now obviously it's Kawhi's team, but I don't even think Lowry is their number 2 necessarily right now. That's kind of Siakam has kind of moved into that role, although he's been somewhat inconsistent in the finals too. We've had a couple of great games and a couple of games where he hasn't really been a huge factor, but I think Lowry is what he is. he hasn't had the, in past playoffs, Lowry's had the complete disappearing act or the really negative impacts on a team. I don't think he's done that. I think he's shooting the ball. He's been very inconsistent, but his overall floor game, I think, has been pretty good. And as a glue guy, I think he's been important to them, and in the finals and throughout the playoffs. And I don't fault him on the last shot the other night. If he doesn't shoot it there, they don't get a shot off. The ball came to him, and like I say, really Green is the one that disrupted the whole sequence. Any defender other than Green, and he probably gets that off, and who knows if it goes in or not. So, I think Lowry is what he is. I think he's he's a solid, above average NBA guard. I don't think he's necessarily an all NBA guy, but he's certainly not a scrub either.
And and I agree with you. I don't think he's a scrub by any by any stretch of the imagination. It's just it's that 9 points, then 20, then it's you expect with a $31 million player more consistency. You expect making that type of money that's close to Steph Curry money to be a little bit more of 2 assists in a game of playing the majority of the game as a starting point guard on the team. Just these kind of the low output, and he has these shots, but it's almost become that people are more surprised if he makes the shot or stunned if he can do this and that. And that's the thing is I see the way that he's played and I see what he's done. And I was a proponent for them keeping Kyle Lowry when they almost traded him a few seasons ago to the New York Knicks, and they decided to keep him. I thought that would have been a mistake. But to see a player just kind of fade in and fade out, is he going to be worth that money? I mean, next year he makes over $33 million. So, I know that we're in the finals right now, but as we extend here, is this a player that you think Toronto should keep giving that type of money to when they're trying to win championships?
Well, his contract is a different discussion. I think he's got, and I don't ever fault the player for getting what they can get. So,
right.
Your worth is what somebody's willing to pay you. But I think at the same time, Toronto has been a franchise that, traditionally they haven't been a huge player in the free agent market. Canadian dollar, playing, having to go out of the country, so forth and so on. So they haven't been a huge threat in free agency. So when they had guys like DeRozan who committed to staying there, and Lowry, maybe they overpay a little bit for those guys to be able to, or whereas some teams have the hometown discount, like Klay Thompson has basically been underpaid for Golden State because he wanted to stay there and stay a part of what they're doing there. We'll see if that stays the same this summer. But, in Toronto's case, maybe they had to pay a little bit of a markup to get a guy like Lowry, get a guy like DeRozan to commit to them. So, I think Lowry, he's probably got a contract that makes him untradeable. So, I think for better or for worse, I think he's going to be a part of Toronto's core, until he plays out his contract.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be there because I don't think anybody's going to assume, that money. I mean, I think that money, it's so high. But, are you still waiting to kind of see that moment, though? I feel like, if Lowry had done a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I know we could say it about Danny Green and we could say about Van Vliet and whatnot, whatever, but we've seen different players step up at different times, and he's had his moments, but I just feel like you kind of you want to be able to lean a little bit more on Lowry or have the ball in his hands, coming up the floor on that last drive and having him utilize his vision because he's made some tremendous passes in the game. So instead of Van Vliet, to put it in the hands of Lowry and let Lowry kind of see what's going on here? Because as we see this play develop, and I'm watching it over and over again in the studio, I'm asking myself, why did Kawhi pick the ball up? Why didn't he try to force his way through that double team because they were moving and get himself fouled? Danny Green was wide open. So, I mean, when you go back and you watch this play, to you, what are your thoughts kind of going through this? Do you think Kawhi should have tried to advance down the paint? Do you think that there should have been maybe a little bit more ball movement and, seeing that Danny Green was open in the corner and then Danny Green was open at the elbow, should he have taken the shot? Because that's another thing people said is like, listen, Danny Green was cold, but he's been good these last few games. He hit a big-time shot recently. They should have put the ball there and gone to the right side instead of the left.
Well, I mean, the one thing that surprised me a little bit is that Kawhi gave it up a little bit willingly, I thought. Especially considering the role he had been on, 2-3 minutes earlier in the game. I thought he might try to be a little bit more assertive in taking on the double team and taking matters into his own hands. I thought he kind of accepted the double team and gave it up a little bit earlier, and then like what I mentioned a minute ago is he really didn't do anything to get it back in that situation. That would be the biggest thing that surprised me on that situation is that maybe Kawhi wasn't a little bit more assertive or aggressive in trying to create something. Like you said, get something going to the basket, see if you can get a foul in a double team, those kinds of things. But that was my biggest surprise in that sequence.
The way that they came back, speaking here with Dave Pasiak, basketball coach and analyst here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora this morning on the Toronto Raptors and Golden State Warriors series. Being a coach and seeing the way that they came back and what they did and how they did it, the never say die, like I said, approach by this team. You think that they blew a golden opportunity here. On the other side of it, Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, just the way that they shot and obviously, getting their defender to kind of jump on it. Just what you could say about the last sequence of these last few minutes where Toronto was able to go up, get over 100 points, get up by 6, and then, kind of see where this game went from there. Just what you could say about Golden State and Toronto in that seesaw with those last few minutes, about 3 minutes left to go in the game. Just ultimately what you saw within those 3 minutes with a team that was viciously trying to claw their way back, and then another team that was hitting the big-time shots when they needed to, and how close this game was. Because Toronto, it's 1 point. It's one single point at home. So, in these last 3 minutes, just what you saw from both sides, because obviously Golden State had their sharpshooters do what they do on a daily basis come through.
Yeah, and, Golden State played with urgency, and I think, throughout the playoffs, really, in the finals and throughout the playoffs, I think Golden State has been at their best when they've had that urgency. Whether it was the early stages of Game 5 where, they forged ahead and kind of extended that lead even with the Durant injury. If you look back to the Portland series, they were down double figures multiple games in that series and came back and won. I think they have been at their best, when their backs have been against the wall. And I think, that was the case the other night after Toronto went up 6. But the majority of that game felt like Golden State was in control and Toronto was hanging on. And then in the fourth, the Raptors kind of fought their way back, and then Kawhi went on that little personal run to put them up 6. And he said, maybe Toronto's going to close it out. And that was the point in the game where it felt like it swung, and Toronto was going to close the game out. And then coming out of that timeout, like you say, Golden State. Kerr was on a media interview, and I forget exactly how he framed it, but they talked about, guys being able to play in the big moments, and he says you gotta be willing. You got to be willing to shoot the ball and willing to accept the consequences, and not be afraid to miss in those situations. And I think Thompson and Curry have been in certainly enough of those moments over recent seasons where I don't think either one of those guys, has any reluctancy or has any fear of missing in those situations. So, they closed the game out the way you would expect a team that's won 3 of the last 4 championships to do.
Yeah. And to do what they've done, now they're back in Oracle. The Raptors won both games there, Game 3 and Game 4. Your thoughts about heading back to the West Coast? They don't have Kevin Durant again. I do want to get to that in just a moment, but your take on Toronto heading back to the West Coast, where they've won 3 games that they've played against them this season, 1 in the regular season without Kawhi Leonard by 20. They won that game. And then the last 2 that have been here inside of the NBA Finals. Your take on Golden State going back to Oracle, Toronto having another opportunity, and this being a very, very dicey seesaw of a moment because it's either going to tie the series and force a Game 7, or the Raptors are finally going to be able to say that they shut the door.
I think I'm in a little bit of the minority when you listen to some of the talking heads and read the analysis and everything. But I think Golden State's in a really good position to win the series now. I think going back home, today's the last game in Oracle. They're going to play with that urgency. I'll be really impressed with Toronto if they're able to pull it off tonight. Because I think things are lined up for Golden State. As well as they can be, not having Durant and whatnot. But, Toronto beating them for a 3rd time in the series, at Oracle, I think, is a really tall order for the Raptors. And, so I think Golden State's in a really good spot to tie the series up. And then, when you come to Game 7, then it becomes really intriguing. Then it's, then you're looking at Toronto with home court advantage and really has been the better team in the series. Point differential is always, a lot of the NBA experts and whatnot look at point differential, average point differential is like being the true barometer of team strength and everything. And in this series, if you look at that, the point differential has been heavily in Toronto's favor. The games they've won have been comfortable margins, and Golden State has the 2 games they won have been 1 point, 5 points in the last couple possessions of the game. So Toronto really has been the better team overall in the series, but I think the way things are lined up now, if it goes to a Game 7 in Toronto, which way do you lean? The Raptors, who have been the better team and have the home court advantage, or the Warriors leaning on their their experience and their championship pedigree and those kind of things. So I would be very, very surprised if the Raptors close it out tonight. I'm thinking it's probably going 7, and 7's going to be an intriguing game.
Yeah, it is. It's very hard to look at this series and think that Toronto can easily shut the door now because of everything that's been going on. This is going to be a very, very tough game for them to do this. There's a lot of emotion and whatnot, but when you have your foot on the throat, you got to be able to finish it off. You got to be able to close the door, and Toronto has to have that killer mentality tonight. I think it's going to be a great Game 6. I'm on the other side. I think Toronto's got a good chance to win this thing. I think that they know that they let one go, and they can't let one go this time around. Kevin Durant's not going to be there. I want to discuss that. They brought him back. Now, I didn't think necessarily he was coming back. There was a lot of smoke and mirrors. He traveled to Toronto, but allegedly he wasn't doing any team workouts, and he wasn't doing too much of anything out there. So he was there, but he wasn't. Then Game 3, they said he was going to play, but more likely Game 4. Then he travels to Toronto for Game 5, but is he going to be out there? So they bring him out onto the floor. He starts scoring immediately. He's got an immediate effect on the team. We see that, he hasn't really gone cold, even though he's been out for a bit. And then he has an Achilles injury, and he just had surgery and posted it on Instagram and let everybody know that, he's doing all right, and it was a successful surgery. God bless, no matter who you're a fan of. So, your take on bringing him back, because Bob Myers, the GM of the Warriors, I don't know if you've ever seen this, Dave, but I've never seen that much emotion come out of a general manager or coach or anybody in the front office dealing with an injury to a player during a game and taking all of the brunt for it and taking the responsibility of putting him out there on the floor. What did you think about, them playing him, and then secondly, how Bob Myers reacted to the injury?
Well, I thought them playing him, Durant's an elite level player, and he's a player, and he wants to play. And, I don't put any stock in the notion about Golden State forcing him to play. I think that, Kevin Durant he's a elite level player, and I think he wanted to be out there, and probably if left to his own devices would have been out there sooner than that. I think, their medical staff deemed him ready to go. I think a lot of the stuff that you heard and saw in the media that was, coming from Kerr and coming from the Warriors about is he going to play, is he not going to play, I really think that was just, a little bit of gamesmanship on Golden State's part the whole way through. If you left that open question every game, going all the way back to the Portland series, I mean, there was nothing definitive there. That was even a game-to-game situation. So I think a lot of it was, just to give Toronto something more to think about and to prepare for, and versus saying no, he's definitely out for another week, or he's. So I think that a lot of that stuff was just a little bit of gamesmanship on the Warriors' part. But in terms of him playing the other night, I think Durant played because he's a competitor and elite level player, and he wants to play, and probably felt like in the workouts and in the things that they did leading up with the medical staff, felt like that he was at a point where he could go out there and be effective, and he really was right up until the injury. So it's just a really, really unfortunate thing to him, for him, and hopefully he makes a full recovery. And to see this, like what the why, people ask why, if he can opt out, why would you do this? Because now you're going to be affected. But now he's in a situation where he gets paid $31.5 million on a player option. If he decides to stay with Golden State and rehab his body and be there, he's going to make over $30 million and not even have to play and just work on rehabbing and be around the people that he loves and the team that he loves and cares about, allegedly. So he's in a situation where, okay, well, did he affect his stock? Maybe. But at the same time, he could stay there, rehab, make his money, and kind of move forward and be in a place of comfort. So what do you think of the situation? Because he has that player option looming, and he can say to Golden State, I'm using my player option, $31.5 million. Give me my money. I'll be rehabbing at the team facility. I mean, where do you think about where he stands right now? It creates a really complicated and really interesting web, because, on the one hand, he's probably looking at missing most all of next season. He can opt in, take the player option, and maybe he's in a situation a little bit like Cousins this year, where he comes back late in the season and they have him as a weapon for the playoffs and everything. On the other hand, he goes that route and he comes back and he's not the player that he was. And then he goes on the open market next summer. Does that give some teams pause about signing him? Or signing him to the same deal that he command now? And conversely, if he doesn't opt in and he goes on the market this summer, does his medical situation, basically somebody would be signing him to a max deal, a 4-year max deal, knowing they're not getting anything out of him the first year. So that would be a kind of a Nick-like thing to do, a little bit of a move out of desperation for a team. So the other thing that him opting in does is it changes the whole dynamic with Golden State. They're going to have to pay Thompson. I think he goes on the market, and they're going to have to pay Green a year from now when he goes on the market. So, if Durant opts in, that ties up a really big chunk of their salary cap, and kind of limits what they'll be able to do if they bring Thompson back on a max deal. They're not going to have a lot of leeway, a lot of wiggle room to. They're going to have to look for a lot of veterans that are willing to come in on a minimum deal to fill roles and fill spots. They'll have a lot less flexibility if Durant opts in. So that whole scenario, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because it's going to have a ripple effect, with the Warriors and throughout the league.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that piece. So is Kevin Durant that main piece when you look at free agency and you look at what's out there? Is he that one key thing that's kind of everybody's around, or is it Anthony Davis right now? Because there's so much conversation on Anthony Davis and obviously Kawhi. Who do you think is the one in this moment? Because I don't believe and I don't buy into the Kevin Durant going to LA BS, and I don't think Kawhi's going there. So I look at the situation of Anthony Davis and what fell apart before and now what's happening, and do you believe what's being said? Do you believe this report over that report? So when free agency finally opens, are we talking Durant being that domino that knocks the other ones over, or is it Anthony Davis?
Well, I think pre-injury it was clearly Durant. Now post-injury, I don't think it's either one of those guys. I think it's Kawhi. I think he's he's probably the biggest domino to fall in free agency. Davis doesn't hit the market for another year, so Davis is more of a trade situation. And if you believe what's out there, he's narrowed it to the Knicks and the Lakers, which we could get into that whole subject with Anthony Davis. He's on the one hand wants to go somewhere where he thinks he's got a chance to win. On the other hand, particularly if he were to go to the Knicks, that franchise is in far more disarray and a lot farther from winning than the Pelicans are, in my opinion. So I think Davis is a different situation, because they're going to have to work out a deal, with the Lakers or the Knicks, or potentially involve a third team and all that kind of thing. So, strictly in terms of free agency signings, though, I think Kawhi is the biggest domino to fall, and then what he does is going to drive a lot of other things. People that lose out on him, now guys like Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, they become more attractive options, like the consolation prize type options for the people that don't like Kawhi. So I think it'll be interesting to see, though.
Yeah, and this, like you said, Anthony Davis, because he has to be traded and whatnot in the situation that he's in. So, we can get into all that as it opens up, but I do want to do a really quick, to talk about Bob Myers a little bit. I want to go a little bit, deeper into that, because I brought up with Katie Kalinsky this week on the show, and even before that, is this Bob Myers really truly feeling for a player? Is this Bob Myers thinking, I'm going to lose my job? Is this Bob Myers, getting a little more emotional than maybe anticipated because he wants to show Kevin Durant how much he loves him, and is this kind of a ploy to keep him there? So what did you take away from watching that post-game press conference with Bob Myers, the GM of the Warriors, when he got – this you would have thought that somebody had died. He was very, very emotional. He couldn't speak at the beginning of it all. He was shaken up. It looked like a child that was scolded behind the curtain 5 minutes before. And I commend him on being so, open with his emotion about the situation. And at the same time, I wonder why it was so that type of emotion. Knowing, Kevin Durant's not dead. He needed surgery, and obviously it stinks when it happens. But the question is, could he have kept him off the court, even if he told him not to play? Could he have, really just gone against Kevin if Kevin wanted to be out there for his team? So what did you think about the emotion, and where did you think the emotion was going? Because it felt just very, very, very different than what typically happens when a guy goes down. You're sad as a team, but this was another type of level of emotion.
Well, it was really kind of an extraordinary thing because you don't often see, a team executive out there in a press conference in those kind of scenarios. And I think that I don't think the emotion had anything to do with him and his job security. I don't think that's really in question. I think it's probably a little bit of both. Both of the other things. I think he, genuinely cares for Duran and feels for Duran. But I also think that there was probably a little bit of putting it out there, for Duran's benefit too. This is how much you're valued and how much you mean to our franchise. So, I just thought it was extraordinary to see a team executive out there in that situation and to get that emotional.
Yeah, I do, and I think, like you said, that it's a little bit of a couple different things with him having that type of emotion. And speaking of emotion, very emotional game for both teams. Last game at the Oracle, Golden State trying to even the series, Toronto trying to shut the door for a second chance. Dave Pasiak here on the broadcast with us as the Raptors get set. And, hopes for a lot of Raptors fans is that this is the last time outside of away games that we see Kawhi on the West Coast and that he stays in Toronto. So the focus is on Game 6, and it's coming up with us tonight here on Thursday, June 13th. And you can watch it, obviously, and, across the world to see this game and see what happens. Dave, as always, I appreciate, you being on the broadcast and imparting some knowledge and your thoughts and your take on what's going down, and I look forward to watching the game and being in touch with you during the game and after the game as well.
Sounds good. Look forward to talking to you again, Dan.
All right, take care, Dave.
We'll see you.